All right, welcome everybody to today's training. I'm super excited to be able to share with you another story type training. This comes from Zig Ziglar. A lot of people have heard the name Zig Ziglar. He's one of my favorite mentors, teachers. Obviously, there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of people that have really shared their heart and soul with me over the years and have been mentors to me. Everybody from Jim Rohn obviously was one of the big ones, and Zig Ziglar, and there's so many, right? So many. Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, there's all kinds of leadership stuff out there, personal development stuff. I'm a big fan of that. I think everybody knows that that's why I chose the name Kaizen for my team. Team Kaizen being based on the Japanese philosophy of incremental improvements that happen on a daily basis, just little by little. We're getting better each and every day. And it all comes down to being entrepreneurs and taking it into our own hands, not being dependent on anybody, but being independent and masters of our own future and success. And so Zig Ziglar, he did a training, and it was really awesome. I loved it. And it was called the priming the pump, right? And there's a lot of lessons to be taken from this concept of priming the pump. So let's go ahead and dive into this. This comes from his book, See You at the Top. Okay. And what he teaches here is absolutely amazing. So we're going to dive right in and just talk a little bit about what it means to be a pioneer and to understand how a pump, right, a water pump, would work. And they still do, but this is more in times of the pioneers and last century kind of stuff. But this is the idea. He says, one of the props that I like to use in conversations around the country is an old-fashioned chrome water pump. Okay. Now, he says, personally, I love the history of the pump because it represents the history of the pioneers, the history of the free enterprise system, and the history of life. So, to your benefit, I hope you've had the opportunity to at least one time in your life use one of these outdated water pumps, because that experience will help you to appreciate some of the thoughts we're going to share today, right? So, the first thing is that you have to prime it, okay? And that's a key concept. So, he tells the story about several years ago, two of his friends, Bernard Haygood and Jimmy Glenn. They were driving in the foothills of southern Alabama on a hot August day. So they're thirsty, and Bernard notices behind an old abandoned farm a water pump in the yard. Jumps out of the car, runs for the pump, grabs the handle, and he starts pumping. But after a moment or two, Bernard pointed to an old bucket and suggested that Jimmy get the bucket and get some water from the nearby stream in order to prime the pump. Because, as everyone knows or should know, you should put some water on top of the pump to prime it to get the water flow to begin, right? This is similar to the game of life, how life works. In the game of life, before you can get something, you have to put something in, right? Unfortunately, there's so many people who are in front of the stove of life and they say, hey, stove, give me a little heat, and then I'll put some wood in you, right? Or maybe there's a secretary that comes to the boss and says, hey, give me a raise, and then I'll start doing a better job and be more aware. Or often there's a salesperson who goes to his boss and says, hey, make me the sales manager, and then I'll really show you what I can do. It's true, I've not done much until now, but I have to be in charge in order to do my best work. So just make me the boss and then watch me go, right? Or maybe the student will say to the teacher, if I take home bad grades for this semester, my parents are going to really scold me. They're going to be angry. So, teacher, if I get a good grade this quarter, I promise I will study very hard next quarter. My experience has been it doesn't work that way, right? Because if it did, I could easily imagine a farmer praying, Lord, if you'll just give me a crop this year, I promise to plant seeds and work hard next year. But what we're really saying is, reward me and then I'll produce. But life does not work that way. You have to put something in first, right? Before life can expect to give you something back. Now, you can apply this knowledge for the rest of your life, and doing so, you can solve many of your problems. So it all comes down to the law of compensation. So the farmer must sow his seed in the spring or summer before harvesting in the fall. He also puts in a lot of work before he reaches the harvest stage. The student puts out hundreds of hours of work before they acquire the knowledge and graduate. Today's secretary, who will be the office manager of tomorrow, puts a considerable amount of extra effort into her work. The athlete of today, who becomes a champion tomorrow, puts a lot of himself in the form of sweat and effort before he collects the reward of being champion. And the young executive today who becomes the president of tomorrow's company is that individual who worked for it. Today's marketer who becomes the sales manager of tomorrow is the person who understands the principle of pump priming. When you put something in, the law of compensation says you will get something out. Right? Now, the work also makes us appreciate it. So let's go back to my friends in South Alabama. Southern Alabama is hot in August. And after a few pumping minutes, Bernard began to sweat considerably. At that moment, he began to wonder how much work he was willing to do to get that water, right? He was worried about how much, or about the amount of reward he would receive for the amount of effort he was making. So after a while, he said, Jimmy, I don't think there's any water in this well. Well, Jimmy replied, yes, there is, Bernard. In South Alabama, the wells are deep, and that's good because the deep well produces cleaner, sweeter, better tasting water than any other. Jimmy is also talking about life, is he not? The things we have to work on are the things we most appreciate. So it's true satisfaction at that. What you can get easily is usually not worth much. If you could become a doctor in a 6-week summer course, how much would it be worth? If you could be a super seller by listening to a 4-hour sales conference, the competition would be so intense, your commissions would be considerably smaller. So if you go down the list, you'll discover that those skills and goals that require blood, sweat, and tears are what bring true satisfaction and reward. Let's go back to the pump. Now Bernard was hot and tired, right? So he raised his hands and he said, Jimmy, there's just not any water in this well. So Jimmy quickly grabbed the pump handle and kept pumping, saying when he said, don't stop now, Bernard. If you do, the water will go all the way back down. You'll have to start all over again. That too is the story of life. There is no human being in existence, regardless of age, sex, or occupation, who does not occasionally feel that it may be that the pump is broken because there is no water down there. So if from time to time you feel that way, it should be comforting to know there are a lot of people just like you, right? But you just got to keep pumping. Okay. Now let's take a look at something very interesting and obvious. There is no way you can look on the outside of a pump and determine whether it will take 2 more strokes or 200 more to bring the water. There's often no way you can look at the game of life and determine whether or not you will get the big opportunity tomorrow or if it will take another week, months, or years to do so, right? This I do know beyond any reasonable doubt. Regardless of what you're doing, if you are willing to pump for enough time, hard enough, and with enough enthusiasm, sooner or later, that effort will yield the reward. I also know that just as you add nothing to the score if you stop at third base, you cannot quench your thirst with water that's almost coming out of the pump, right? Fortunately, once the water starts to flow, all you have to do is maintain that constant pressure in the pump, and you'll get more water than you could ever use. This is the story of success and happiness in life. Persistence, right? The message is clear. Whatever you're doing, work on it with the right attitude, the right habits, but above all, stick to it with tenacity and persistence. Just as the flow of water is often a breath away, the sweet taste of success and victory is often just a little bit further up the hill or around the corner. Whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a student, a homemaker, a pawn, or salesman, once the water flows, it is easy to keep it flowing with a little constant effort. We will never know how many young people lost a college scholarship because they did not study 10 more minutes a day, or how many employees missed out on a promotion because they did not stay on task just a few minutes more each day for a few more weeks, or how many sales were lost because the prospect was not given one more reason to make a decision today. You get what you want. So I think the story of the pump is the story of life. and the system of free enterprise. I say this because it has nothing to do with age or education, whether you're white or black or male or female, overweight or underweight, extroverted or introverted, or if you're Catholic, Jewish, or Protestant. It has everything to do with your God-given right as a free person to work as long as you want, as hard as you want, and with as much enthusiasm as you want to get everything in life that you really want. As you progress to the top, you must remember the history of the pump. Even if you start pumping casually or with a little enthusiasm, you always have to pump before anything happens. Pump hard to start and continue like this until the water flows. Then a great thing is going to happen. Once the water starts to flow, you will only have to keep the pressure constant, and the time will come when the reward will be so huge that you will get what you want instead of having to want what you get. So that, my friends, is the story and the analogy of the pump from Zig Ziglar. Hopefully that keeps us motivated over the next little while here. We just got to keep pumping. We just got to keep going because eventually that water will come and it will be the sweetest water we've ever tasted. So with that, we'll let you get back to your weekends. Thanks so much. And we'll just stay close to the campfire. Take care, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Good job.
Thank you.